Oh, hello. Sorry, I was miles away there. Do you know, I've read that book before. Have you ever read a book that was so good you read it 2, 3, or 4 times? We'll talk this week about our favourite books and what makes them so good. But for now, let's get started because it's Tuesday's reading skills today. And this week we're going to start a new text. The text and questions will be on the video, so you can pause them and find them from here and answer them in your books, or you can, if you want, go to files where you'd be able to print them off if you want to do it that way. For today and for the whole of this week, you're going to need a pen or pencil, a purple pen. If you've got one, if you don't, you could use a purple pencil. If you've got neither, then just any colour, any different colour will do. And of course your book. So if you want to pause here and get any of those bits or go over to files and print off your sheet, now's the time. Okay, so this week I did say we're going to spend a few minutes each day thinking about our favourite books and thinking about that love of reading that we talk about. And I thought I'd share with you some of my favourite books this week. These aren't books that I'm recommending to you necessarily. These are books that I've read over my life and ones that I've really, really enjoyed and stuck with me. The first one is one that I read in secondary school. It was one I had to read for English. I think in year 10 or 11, something like that. But I loved it and I've read it again since and just have another look at it now. The book's called To Kill a Mockingbird, and it's a story of 2 young children in 1930s Alabama in the southern states of the USA. It's a story of their father. They're brought up by their father because their mothers died. And his part in a story of racial injustice, of racial inequality. Their father, Atticus, is a lawyer, and he represents a black man in a court trial where the system is biased against him, against the black man, Tom Robinson, and where the trial isn't fair, and this man doesn't get a fair trial, and he's accused and convicted of a crime he didn't commit. Now, in the book, I find the themes of it, what it's about, really interesting, and I love the character of Atticus. He's a really honourable and very principled and moral man, and he's full of good advice in the book. And one particular piece of advice that he gives to his children is that he says to them, I wanted you to see what real courage is. Instead of getting the idea that courage is a man with a gun in his hand, it's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through no matter what. Some really good advice. But what we need to do to, I think, understand this is just get a bit of a better understanding of the vocabulary. So I've got some vocab questions for you to pause and think about here. In this text, what does courage mean? What does the word courage mean? And the second question, which word in the text means beaten? So you're looking for a word that could be replaced with beaten. So pause here and have a go at those. Okay, so I'm hoping you said that courage means bravery, or there are other words for it, but I think that's the closest one. The word that means beaten is licked. So if we pop those replacements in, it helps us to understand the text a little bit easier. So he's saying, I wanted you to see what real bravery was, instead of getting the idea that bravery is a man with a gun in his hand. So he's saying to them that actually bravery isn't all about fighting and physically standing up for yourself. Atticus says, it's when you know you're licked before you begin, it's when you know you're beaten before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through no matter what. What Atticus is saying to Jeb and Scout in the book is that real bravery and real courage is when you stand by your convictions and you do what you believe is right no matter what the circumstances, even if you know you're going to lose. And in this the court trial in To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus knows he's going to lose, but he still gives it everything, and he still perseveres and sees it through no matter what. So that's a good message from a really, really good book. So my question to you is, Like me, have you got a book like To Kill a Mockingbird that you've read a few times? Is there one particular story that's stuck in your mind? And I want you to think about, maybe tell someone at home, what is it about that book that makes it rereadable? Put the prefix re on the front of readable there to mean again. What makes it so good you want to read it again? So let's move on to today's text. And this week's text, which is another Mayan one, it's Help Wanted, Ancient Mayan Citizen. So that's the name of our text, Help Wanted. Okay, I'm going to read through this bit. We're going to pause at some of the vocabulary points, the ones in yellow, and just help to define them. And then we'll move on to some questions. Job role, Ancient Mayan Citizen. Location, Tikal, Guatemala. Salary, 500 cacao beans and 2 sacks of salt per year. So you think you can handle the job of being an ancient Mayan? Look at the following job description to see if you're up to the task. Okay, so what we've got here is what looks like a job description. I hope you might remember this from looking at some of the PSHE that we did yesterday, linked to careers, and understand what's meant by job description. Within there we have the word citizen. So citizen is someone who lives within a state. So we could all say that we are all citizens of the United Kingdom because that's where we live. Another word to define there is cacao beans. So cacao is the plant from which we get chocolate. So it's the name of the plant from which we get chocolate. And we can see a bit of a derivation of the word cocoa within it, can't we? The two are very linked in the sound. Okay, moving on then, we've got some subheadings here that are related to this job description. I'm not going to say too much about job description because that relates to one of our questions that I want you to answer in your own words. Travel. Firstly, you will need to be able to travel to our beautiful location in an area of Mesoamerica called the Yucatan, which you might now know as southern Mexico and Central America. The land in this area varies between high mountain ranges, exotic rainforests and stunning coastlines. The word exotic there is used because exotic means from far away places. So if we use that in another way, we could say that I enjoy eating exotic foods. So I can say that means I enjoy eating foods from around the world. Right, moving on. There are no vehicles, so your only mode of transport will be walking. So that paragraph tells us a little bit about travel in the Mayan civilization, what the travel would be like as a Mayan citizen. Let's move on and read the education paragraph. Education. You will need to be able to fluently read and write using our ancient Mayan symbols. Fluently, this question is going to come up later in the week, so I'll just say a little bit about it, not too much. The word fluently, well, we can use it when we're talking about a language. We might ask someone, do you speak French fluently? And this means, do they speak French like a French speaker without having to stop and think, oh, what's the word for something? Or how do I say? A fluent speaker can just say exactly what they want to say straight away. Moving on, the Mayan alphabet system is made up of over 1,000 symbols which represent different sounds made in our language. We also use symbols instead of numbers. So, this is a job description. So this isn't a job description for a nurse or a bus driver or an actual real job. It's a job description for an ancient Mayan citizen. It's used in a way to give us some information, isn't it, about the Maya. We've found out a little bit about the way that they travel around. We've found out about what kind of education you would need to get by in the Maya. And then we've got a bit of information about location. There's some mention there of salary. I spoke about salary in yesterday's PSHE lesson, so you might be confident to know exactly what a salary is. If you didn't catch that lesson, it's related to work, and everybody who works, unless they work voluntarily, gets some form of wage or salary. Okay, so let's move on to the questions that we're looking at today. Here they are then. What I'm going to do is just make them a little bit bigger for you so that you can see them and pause them as you want to. Here are the first questions. What type of text is this? What is the purpose of this text? Think about that one with a bit of care. Why is this written in this style? What's the purpose of it? What does the term salary mean in the context of this text? What is the salary for the role of an ancient Mayan citizen according to this text? So there's a retrieval question. Which words and phrases from the text show that the Mayans lived in an attractive area? So there we're trying to find the vocabulary, the words within the text that relate directly to the Mayans living in a nice, attractive place to live. Question 6, and I'm going to scroll right down now so you can pause. Text asks for, I'll just move myself out of the way, sorry. People who can fluently read and write in ancient Maya. What does fluently mean in this context? Summarize the content of the education system, or the education section of the text in one sentence. And question 8, what do you think would be the hardest part of ancient Mayan working life? Explain your answer. What do you think would be the hardest part of ancient Mayan working life? That's a prediction question. When you haven't got a lot of information about that, you need to go on and predict that one yourself. Okay, here come the answers. So if you're not quite ready, you might just want to pause because we're going straight to question number 1. What type of text is this? It's a job advertisement or a job description. What's the purpose of the text? Well, 2 ways of looking at it. You could say that it is to advertise a job to the general public, or you can kind of see through the fake job description and recognize that actually it's a clever way of giving somebody information about the Mayan history. It's a sort of fake job advert so that you can learn more about the Maya. It's the kind of thing we see on Horrible Histories where they have sort of fake competitions, or we have kind of fake setups so that you can be educated and learn about a particular type of history. What does the term salary mean here? Well, it's that fixed payment that you get by an employer for your work. The salary was the 500 cacao beans and 2 sacks of salt. What words and phrases show that the Mayans lived in an attractive area? You've got those there. Fluently, we talked about that in terms of language, didn't we? But when it's talking about reading and writing in ancient Mayan, yeah, it means to write confidently, to do it without having to think about it, with ease and without lots of errors. The summary of the education text would be you need to read and write using ancient Mayan symbols, which can be difficult, which can be complex to understand. And the last one is your response, really, and one that I couldn't mark through a video. It would be one that made reference to the text of what you think might be one of the hardest parts of ancient Mayan working life. Okay, I'll be back tomorrow for our next section of this reading skills. See you then.